Hello, Hudson. I'm sending you a video of lessons 88, 89, 90, and 91. We'll start with lesson 88. And it's called Solutions of Quadratic Equations. And these are the 3 steps you'll want to follow. Write the equation in standard form. Okay, I'll show you what that looks like here in a minute. Then we're going to factor. And then we'll set them equal to 0 and solve for x. The directions you'll see in the homework will simply say solve. So that's how you'll know the difference between factoring and leaving it or solving it. Okay, so this first example says use the factor method to find the roots. Roots is another way of saying the solutions, the answers. And this is the problem they give to us. Now I want you to notice that it's not in standard form, meaning I should move this over here in the middle for it to go descending order and then put a 0 in its place. So go ahead and follow along with me and write down x squared minus 3x. Because remember, we change the sign when we move it across the equal sign. And then negative 18 equals 0, because I took what was over there on the right and moved it to the left. So now I have nothing on the right. Okay, you may remember last week I taught you how to do parentheses, parentheses. And because there's an x out front, we're going to use xx here at the beginning of each parentheses. And then we're going to ask ourselves, what times what is 18? That when added together will give me a 3. And immediately I'm thinking of 6 times 3, because that's 18. But because I need a negative 3, I'm going to make the 6 negative. So I can get a negative 3 when added together, and a negative 18 when multiplied. Okay, this is the new step you're learning today. We're going to set both of these equal to 0. Each of these factors equal to 0. So over here, x is going to equal positive 6. And over here, x is going to equal negative 3. So those are my answers. Okay, let me do another one with you. Example 2 says solve. Find the roots. That just means the answers. I have to first write this in standard form. So I'm going to move this over to say 4x squared minus 25 equals 0. Because remember, the negative 4x squared is going to change signs. And we want descending order. So that's why we started with the 4x squared. Now, try to remember that when I taught you if there's a minus sign and there's a missing piece, you know how normally there's 3 pieces, 3 terms. Well, when there's only 2 terms and there's a missing term in the middle, we know this is called the difference of 2 perfect squares. So it'll look like this. Once again, we need to look over here. We know that that's an xx. However, we have a number out front. So we have to take the square root of both of these. That means we have 2x, 2x. That'll give us the 4x squared. We're going to do a plus minus. That's what's going to get rid of that middle term. That's why there's only 2 terms, because it's a plus minus. And then the square root of 25 is 5. Now normally, if my homework said factor, I would just leave that. But because it says solve, I need to set both of these equal to 0. Now I'm going to subtract 5 from over here, so 2x equals negative 5. And over here I'm going to add 5. Last step, divide by 2. So x equals negative 5 halves. And then divide by 2 over here, x equals positive 5 halves. So those are my answers. Okay, pause the video and try these 2 on your own, and then come back and check your work. Alright, though these directions are a little bit different, they want us to do the same thing. So just pay attention. It says solve, but this one says find the values of x that satisfy. This one simply says solve, but they all mean to do the same exact thing. So hopefully you remembered to put this in descending order in standard form, and then factor. So xx 8 times 7 is 56. I need a positive 1x, so I'll make the 8 positive and the 7 negative. And then as I set each of these equal to 0, I know that x is negative 8 and x is positive 7. So those are my two answers. This one down here needs to be rewritten. 3x squared minus 6x minus 9 equals 0. And this one's a little different. We need to divide by 3 on each of these before we can factor. So x squared minus 2x minus 3 equals 0. Parentheses, parentheses, x, 3 times 1 is 3. I need a negative 2, so I'll make that 3 negative and the 1 positive. And I know that x equals positive 3 and negative 1. All right, lesson 89. Lesson 89 deals with systems of equations, which we've already learned how to substitute and eliminate. But this time it's with word problems. So we'll have to set up those equations and then solve with your preference of either elimination or substitution. So this first step is translate the word problem, and then the second step is to use whatever method. All right, example 1 says, airline fares for flights from Tifton to Adele are $30 for first class and $25 for tourist class. If a flight had 52 passengers who paid a total of $13.60, how many first class passengers were on the trip? All right, there's a lot of information going on here, but we can tell from the pattern that they're trying to give us information on two categories, two variables, right? The variables are first class, so I'll put an F for first class, we'll use that. And then the other one is tourist class. Did you catch that? I'll highlight it for you so you can see first class, tourist class. So that's kind of a clue that you'll know that this is that type of problem. It also gives me the values. So it says $30 goes with first and $25 goes with tourist. And then here's another money value. Another thing I want to point out is how many passengers. So you'll always want to start off with the total. It says the number of first class plus the number of tourists equals a total of 52 passengers. Then you'll want to attach the values to them, kind of like we did with nickels, pennies, and dimes. So this should look very familiar, but this time they're using different types of word problems, not money and coin word problems. So let's put the $30 with the first class, the $25 with the tourist, and then the total amount of money, which is $13.60. Now, if I remember correctly, I think you preferred substitution. So over here, we're going to rewrite this by moving the t over. So first equals 52 minus tourist, right? We're subtracting the t to the other side, which now helps us know what f equals, right? F is 52 minus t, so we're going to substitute 52 minus t in for f and solve carefully. All right, so we have 30 parentheses 52 minus t close parentheses plus 25t equals 1360. Now we're going to distribute. So we're going to multiply the 30 times 52, which we get 1560 minus 30t. Be careful to distribute that 30 across. 25t equals 1360. All right, now we're going to combine like terms. So you notice here we have a negative 30 and a positive 25t, which gives me a negative 5t. So we have 1560 minus 5t equals 1360. Now we're going to subtract this 1560 over to the other side. So we're going to do 1360 minus 1560, which is negative 200. So we have a negative 5t equals a negative 200. Divide both sides by the -5 to get a positive 40. So the tourist is 40 people, but they didn't ask me for that, did they? They said how many first class. Well, if we know this equation, meaning the passengers add up to 52, all we have to do is subtract 52 minus 40, which is 12. So the first class must be 12 passengers. Let's look at another one. It says here, Watson's dress shop sold less expensive dresses for $20 each and more expensive ones for $45 each. The shop took in this much money and sold 20 more of the less expensive than the expensive. How many of each kind did they sell? So they want both answers, not just the first class like before. Okay, so let me highlight some important information. We have less expensive for 20. We have more expensive for 45. We have a total of this much. And this one's very important, this line right here. They sold 20 more of the less than the expensive. All right, so let's turn these words into equations. We know that they sold 20 more of the less than the expensive. So be careful how you write this. Less is going to be 20 more than the more expensive. And then our second equation is going to be the values. So 20 for less plus 45 for more equals the money value, $13.75. Now this one's already set up nicely for me to substitute, so you don't have to move anything to get started. We just have to plug that in for L. So 20, open parentheses, L equals 20 plus M, so we just put in like that, plus 45M equals 1375. All right, so 20 times 20, that's 400, plus 20M plus 45M equals 1375. Let's combine like terms. Notice we have a 20M and a 45M, which is a 65M. So we're going to write 400 plus 65M equals 1375. Now let's subtract the 400 from both sides. So we're going to do 1375 minus 400, which is 975. So we have 65, let me get my other color back out. 65M is equal to 975. Now we're going to divide both sides by 65, which is 15. So we know the more expensive is 15 dresses. Look back up here. The less expensive is 20 more than the M. So if we plug in 20 more than M, 20 plus the 15 we just found, that would be 35 dresses for the less expensive ones. So 15 of the more, 35 of the less. And that is lesson 89. We'll move on to lesson 90 now. Word problems with statements of equality. Again, we have to translate the word problems into two equations, and then we solve using substitution or elimination. So an extension of what we've already been doing. You could probably already do these, but we're going to do one together. It says, together, Charles and Nell picked 92 quarts of berries. If Charles picked 6 more quarts than Nell, how many quarts did each of them pick? All right, so notice we have two variables again. We have Charles and we have Nell, and together they picked 92 quarts of berries. But they're saying that if Charles picked 6 more than Nell, how many quarts did each of them pick? So we're going to substitute this right here. All right, so we have 6 plus n equals 92. We're going to combine like terms, so we have 6 plus 2n equals 92. Then we're going to subtract 6 from both sides, so that's 86. And then we're going to divide by 2, so we know that n is equal to 43. Well, if n is 43, we can find Charles by putting the 43 in right here. So let me get a different color, and we'll do 6 plus 43, and that is 49. So Charles picked 49, and Nell picked 43. Okay, this is the one I really want to draw to your attention, because this isn't one that we've worked before, using ratio. So it says the ratio of two numbers is 5 to 4, and the sum of the numbers is 63. What are the numbers? So when you hear ratio, in fact, I'm going to highlight that because I really want it to stand out to you whenever you're working these in your homework. You're going to solve ratio word problems like this. First, you're going to set it up as a ratio. Okay, so you're going to say 5 over 4. All right, and let's see. It says here the sum of the numbers is 63. Okay, well, before I jump to that, let's use x and y. So x over y, whatever it is, the ratio is 5 to 4. If you cross multiply, you're going to get 4x equals 5y. All right? And then it says here that the sum of the numbers is 63. So x plus y is 63. Well, I'm going to rewrite this as x is equal 63 minus y. I moved the y over by subtracting it. So that way I could find out what to plug in for x over here. So this is the ratio set up as a fraction. They said the ratio is 5 over 4. And then the sum of those two numbers is 63. All right, so now let me substitute in over here. I'm going to do 4 open parentheses, 63 minus y equals 5y. Now I'm going to distribute. So I have to do 4 times 63, which is 252, minus 4y equals 5y. Let's add that 4y over to be with the 5y, because those are like terms. So I have 252 equals 9y. So let me divide both sides by 9. And we get y to equal 28. Now, they want to know both numbers. See up here, it says what are the numbers? So though I've solved for y, I need to solve for x by using this right here. I'm going to put the 28 in the y's place. So we have equals 63 minus 28, which is 35. So we know y is equal, not y, x. X is equal to 35. And those are the numbers. Okay, I want you to try this one down here, or both of these actually, as best as you can. If you get stuck, you can unpause the video, but try to solve this on your own and see how you do. So pause the video and give it a try. Okay, it says the greater of two numbers. So we know we have a large and a small. Okay, and the large is 16 greater than the smaller. So I can go and write that down as the large is 16 greater than the smaller. When added together, so I know I'm going to add them, their sum, is 4 less than 3 times the smaller. So I don't know if you remember me teaching you this, but when you say 4 less than, you got to put it back here, because we're subtracting it from 3 times the smaller. okay? So when added together, their sum is, so notice how I said their sum is 4 less than 3 times the smaller. All right, well, we already have this set up to substitute. So I'm going to plug in where I see an L right here. I'm going to put 16 plus S. So I'm going to do 16 plus S equals 3S minus 4. Now I'm going to combine like terms to write 16 plus 2S equals 3S minus 4. Now I'm going to switcheroo. I'm going to minus the 2S from here and put it with the 3S, so it goes away there. Then I'm going to add the 4 to be with the 16. So what I end up getting is 20 equals S. Now if 20 is S, I got to come up here, put a 20 in right here in place of S to find my larger number. So we're going to do equals 16 plus the 20, which is 36. So the large is 36 and the small is 20. So that's what that problem. Now this one says the sum of two numbers is 72. All right, sum means add, so we'll do x plus y equals 72. The difference of the numbers, x minus y, is 26. What are the numbers? Okay, well, we're just going to move one of these over. I'm choosing the bottom one, but you could have chosen the top one. I just like to add, so I'm adding that y over. And then I'm going to substitute this in for x up here. So we have 26 plus y equals 72. And then I have 26 plus 2y equals 72. And then I'm going to subtract that 26 from the 72, which is 46. So we have 2y equals 46. Divide by 2 to find that y is 23. Now once again, they ask for the numbers, so I can't stop there. I have to plug the y in, that 23 right there. So we get equals 26 plus the 23 we just found. Therefore, x is equal to 49. Those are my answers there. All right, last lesson, 91. This one's called multiplicative property of inequality. We're going to solve for x. We're going to remember to flip the inequality symbol when dividing by a negative. Graph carefully and pay attention to the domain. All right. So this first example, example 1, says graph the solution. Negative x greater than or equal to 2. The difference in this lesson is the domain. When it says reals, you're going to shade in the line. When it says integers, you're going to place dots, because remember, integers are only the tick marks on the number line, not the in-betweens. So first things first, I have to get x alone. Right there, there's a negative. So I have to divide by a -1 to get the negative off the x. Here's the key. The lesson up here says that you have to remember to flip the inequality symbol when dividing by a negative. So you see this right here, greater than equal to, it's now going to turn into a less than or equal to. So x is less than or equal to a -2, because remember, I divided by a -1. All right, now it's time to graph, but I have to remember to keep in mind the domain. So that tells me to shade in the whole line, not the whole line, but here I'll show you. So we know that we have a -2. So I'm going to put a -2 right here. And then from there, it says that x is less than or equal to, right? So I'm going to put a point on the -2. I'm going to make sure I shade it in, okay, because it's equal to. If it didn't have that underline under it, then I would have just put a hollow circle. All right, so because it says domain, I'm going to shade in the whole left side of the -2 because the answers are less than -2, and less than goes to the left of -2. So there's my answer. Let's look at another one. It says graph the solution. So first we have to get x alone. So let's do that. Let's subtract 4. So we have -x less than equal to +2. We're about to divide by a -1, which means I have to flip the sign, okay? So I have x greater than or equal to -2. I have to pay attention to the domain. It says integers only, so that means I have to use the dots. So here we have our line. We have a -2. It says greater than equal to, so that means I do a shaded in circle. This time I'm going to the right. So because I want dots only, I'm going to need some more numbers so I can shade them in. So when you see integers, you're going to plot it like that. When you see domain as the reals, you're going to shade it in like that. Integers, dots. Okay. Why don't you try this one on your own? Pause the video and then come back and check it. Okay, first things first, we have to move that, subtract the 4. So we have -3x less than or equal to 9. Then we have to divide by a -3, which means I flip the inequality and I get a -3. I'm going to make my number line, put a -3 in there. Ask myself, do I shade in the circle or keep it hollow? In this case, I shade it in because there's an underline there. And then I'm going to go to the right of the -3 because it said greater than, and because the domain is all reals, I get to shade it in. And so there's my answer. All right, part 2, spheres, finding volume and surface area of spheres. You'll want to keep these formulas handy because all you're really doing is plugging in and solving. That's it. They're going to give you all the information you need. See this example here? Find the volume, so we knew to use this one. Later it's going to say surface area, so you'll know to use this one. The radius is 3 centimeters, so that's important information. Radius 3 centimeters, because I'm going to plug that right there in place of R. So, volume equals 4/3 pi, the radius is 3 cubed. All I did was plug that in. Now, from here, we can plug this in to our calculator. Let me show you. 4/3 pi, 3 cubed. Okay, so we can do parentheses, 4 divide by 3, close parentheses. Then I can do second, the caret key to do the pi, and then parentheses 3, close parentheses, and then the caret key so that I can put a 3 there because we wanted cubed. And then we're going to hit enter, and our answer is 113.1 because I'm rounding. So 100, where's my, volume is approximately 113.1. Remember to label in cubic centimeters since it's volume. Okay, now surface area. It'll specifically say surface area and it'll tell you a radius. So all we have to do is plug it into this formula. So we're going to write down surface area equals 4 pi 4, because that's the radius, squared. So we will plug that into our calculator. 4 pi 4 squared. So we have 4, second caret key for the pi, 4 squared. There's a squared key on the left column of your calculator. Then we're going to hit enter, and we see that we get 201.1. So 201.1. Area is measured in square units. So we're going to put a little bitty 2 exponent at the top there. And that's all there is. I hope this made sense.